A lady called Sharon Myers disappeared in a New York City hotel while visiting for a weekend. The NYPD were investigating the case, as well as a detective by the name of Jerry Wilson. Jerry had put together so much about the case and couldn't piece anything together at first, but he had then suddenly realized something very strange in the elevator's CCTV footage. It wasn't as simple as that though. He looked through the footage for hours, trying to see anything new jump out at him. The main things that jumped out at him was Sharon entered the elevator and went to the 6th floor. Then she seemed to step out into the hallway and enter the elevator again. Then went back in the elevator and back down to the ground floor. She continued this 3 times, from ground floor to 6th floor, each time stepping out into the hotel's hallway on the 6th floor, apart from the 3rd time. She wasn't seen exiting the elevator when it stopped on the 6th floor the 3rd time. That is when she disappeared. Jerry couldn't figure it out. He sometimes walked through the victims' last steps to see what was happening inside their head, or what could have happened to them meet their last living moments. But what made this strange is what made her disappear. He felt it stupid and even plain crazy, but Jerry had decided to get the elevator in the same pattern as Sharon did. Nothing was strange until he stepped out onto the 6th floor for the 3rd time, and suddenly he felt very hot. And then suddenly fire burst through the hallway, and he could see a figure like a devil or a demon. He saw the number 666 on the wall, and he was never seen again. Of course, none of the fire was caught on camera, and not even Jerry in the hall after his 3rd time riding the lift. He had realized what had happened to Sharon, but it was too late, because now he had met the same fate. Thanks for watching The Assassin Rapper, and if you want to stay up to date on new content, then please subscribe and be sure to hit the bell to be notified on new content. Driving without a license is amazing, and I wish I had done it a long time ago. I had lost my driving license due to reckless driving, and I had to redo my driving lessons. I couldn't be bothered doing my driving lessons all over again, as I was short on money. It seems like everything is coming on top of me. One day I had to walk in the rain, as I didn't have a car anymore, and my financial situation had worsened, as I couldn't even afford driving anymore. Then one day somebody borrowed me their car, as they saw me walking in the rain. This person is my neighbour, and he asked me about my car, and I told him everything about me losing my licence, and not having any money. After hearing that, my neighbour suddenly wanted me to drive his car, and he wanted to sit in the passenger seat, but said that because he had a driving licence, it would stop me from experiencing great things if he was to be in the car. I started driving his car, and I noticed the rain never touched the car, and nor the winter cold air ever froze the car, because I didn't have a driving licence. When I hit someone, I thought I had killed them, but then they got up and they said to me, "Because you were driving without a licence, I am still alive." And she walked off. I couldn't believe it, and it felt good to drive without a driving licence, and I felt no road rage or even sleepiness. Even if I did purposely fall asleep at the wheel, Any person I had hit and killed, they weren't dead, because only drivers with licenses can only kill people. I never knew the benefits of driving without a license, and I wished I could have done this years ago. When I drive through haunted roads, and creatures of the night stop and stare at me, they don't dare cross the road when a driver without a license is driving through. It terrifies them, and when I hit my car against another car who has a driver with a driver's license, it is instantly their fault, and only they sustain injuries and consequences of the car crash. Whenever I run through a ghost or a dead body, both of them become part of the living. Driving without a license is amazing. I still get chased by police, and I guess they don't want people knowing the great benefits of driving without a license. Thanks for watching The Assassin Rapper, and if you want to stay up to date on new content, then please subscribe and be sure to hit the bell to be notified on new content. It started one night when I was waiting for the bus. There was a woman waiting next to me, humming a tune. It didn't really stand out to me as strange. She to me was just a woman humming a tune. Inside the bus she was sitting behind me, and she hummed the same tune. All of the bus journey, which was 20 minutes, she hummed it. I didn't find that strange either, really. Well, maybe just a tiny bit. But it was the next day I was waiting for the bus. I found it very strange. A different woman was at the bus stop, humming the same tune. I felt very strange knowing that it would be very unlikely two different women would be singing the same tune, especially a tune that I never heard of. It might be kind of okay if there was a pop song that was being played on the radio morning, noon and night, but there was something strange about it. To be quite honest, it sent shivers up my spine. I knew it was the same tune as I was listening to it for the first night for so long, and sure enough, the woman sat behind me, this new woman, and hummed the tune all the way out. On the third night, I couldn't believe my ears and eyes, as once again a different woman was humming the song. This time I asked the woman, "Excuse me, do you know what song it is you're humming? It's just that there were different women humming that same song." The woman smiled and said, "It's just a song that popped into my head." The next night I was at the bus stop, and thankfully no woman was there humming. I was on the bus and strangely found myself humming the song. I tried to stop, but I kept humming again. I got out a newspaper to read, and when I opened it up, the 3 women hit me with the headline, 3 different women involved in a hit and run 3 different times. It was the woman humming the tune, and it was the other woman. Oh, it was all the women. Even saying this is absolutely crazy, but that's what it was. It was all the women. All the women who were humming the tune. I couldn't believe it. I felt a shiver up my spine. As I got off the bus, I was humming the tune again. I tried my best to stop, but then a car sped up and hit me and killed me instantly. Now I can see the other woman on the other side, and we have the urge to stand at bus stops humming into women's ears. Now I know the reason I start humming it. The ghosts hum in the ears of the living without them actually hearing it, but the spiritual hum goes into their subconscious, and once that happens, well then, they're a ghost sooner or later, like me, after being ran over, of course. It's a vicious cycle, I suppose, but I just couldn't resist humming, and getting other women to embrace humming. Thanks for watching The Assassin Rapper, and if you want to stay up to date on new content, then please subscribe and be sure to hit the bell to be notified on new content. Simon is an established writer. He has a huge catalogue of books he has published. One day he is in his local bar drinking when a stranger walks up to him and introduces himself. "Hello, my name is Jack. I am a huge fan of your books. I've read them all, and I can truly say they are all amazing. There is not one book that isn't gripping from the start to finish." Simon smiled and said, "Well, thank you very much, Jack. It's very nice to get that praise. I'm glad you enjoyed my books." Simon got a strange feeling come over him. He wondered did he know Jack from somewhere, so asked him, "If you don't mind me asking, have we met before?" Jack said, "No, this is the first time I've ever met you, but I just moved into a new cottage about a mile away. I'm actually having a party for my friends to celebrate me moving in. I know this might sound weird, etc., but I would absolutely love if you could make an appearance. It's tomorrow night at around 8. Simon was going to say he was sorry he couldn't, but he said to himself, what the hell, he might as well make a fan happy. So he said, "Yeah, sure, it will be my pleasure. I'll be there around 8:30. Jack smiled and said, "Thanks so much. That means so much to me, and my friends will be so happy to meet you also, as they all love your books." Simon was at home that night, writing his latest book, and he kept thinking there was something familiar about him, but he couldn't put his finger on it. It was driving him mad, but he knew he just had to drop it, as he had to focus on his book, as he had a deadline of 3 weeks for his publishers to get it finished. The next night when Simon was driving to the cottage, with directions he was given by Jack, he was trying to put his finger on it again. Why did he think Jack was familiar? He arrived at his house, and Jack opened the door and asked Simon would he like a drink, while they waited for the guests. Simon said sure, that would be great. Simon was sitting on a sofa in the living room, drinking his drink, when suddenly he felt drowsy. A while later he woke up and he was tied to a chair. He had realised Jack had drugged him. Jack was looking right at him with a sinister smile and said, "Did it hit you yet, Simon? Surely the cottage would have given it away, and me being such a big fan." Simon kicked himself for being so stupid when it finally dawned on him. Jack was acting out a character from his first book, The Fan in the Cottage, where a crazed fan lured Simon to his house in the exact same circumstances. He could not believe how stupid he was, not realising what Jack was up to. He knew that the character in the book would shoot him. Suddenly, just as Simon expected, Jack held a gun to him, and Jack said, "You know how this story ends, but I've added a little twist." Then Jack untied Simon and handed him a gun. "You have a choice, Jack. Shoot me and kill me, or I shoot you. I don't want to live anymore, so what better way to me go than to be killed in the same way as my favourite book by my favourite writer?" Simon pleaded with him, no, no, no. But after about an hour, suddenly, there was a gunshot. Jack's agent had escaped from a room he was locked in for the last few days and shot Jack and explained to Simon that Jack could not deal with his book being rejected by him, and that is why all of this was planned. Thanks for watching The Assassin Rapper, and if you want to stay up to date on new content, then please subscribe and be sure to hit the bell to be notified on new content. Brooke used to have a problem sleepwalking. She would love if she knew she could just sleep and stay asleep in bed, but unfortunately she sleepwalked and did very strange things while sleepwalking. One night Brooke got out of bed and walked down her stairs and down to the basement and did ironing while all in her sleep. Another night Brooke was driving for a few miles all in her sleep. Brooke was very lucky to have not have crashed her car. The thing is with sleepwalking is you should never wake anyone up from sleepwalking, because if you do, they will more than likely suffer confusion arousal. You might put them in more danger if you do wake them up. One night Brooke got up and while asleep walked down her road and into a local construction site. There was a crane and she climbed up the crane, a whole 150 feet high in the air. Brooke walked over the top of the crane while asleep and stood on the edge of it. Thankfully a policeman drove along and spotted her. He had guessed it was Brooke as he knew about her before from other incidents. He knew that if he called out to her, she would suffer from confusion arousal and more than likely would fall as a result. He didn't know what else to do but to call her mom. Lucky Brooke had her phone on her with her pyjamas, which her mom knew she used to do, just in case they couldn't find her after sleepwalking. Her mom rang, and because of her ringtone registering with her as something she knew and her mom's voice, she quickly woke up and thankfully she lived to tell the tale. Thanks for watching The Assassin Rapper, and if you want to stay up to date on new content, then please subscribe and be sure to hit the bell to be notified on new content. Sam was living his life happily up to the age of 16. He then thought he was having hallucinations and felt like he was having some sort of breakdown. But what he really was going through is the truth of reality. He doesn't know, is he the only one in the world with this? I couldn't say it's a problem, because it's a gift and a curse what he has. What he has tapped into, for some reason, is what no one actually can. Sam has discovered that he has slipped into different realities many times, in alternate universes. But the thing is, this is nothing special. This happens us all, but we are not conscious of it. Let's say we do slip into another reality, then we are not conscious of it, we have no memory of it. But the difference with Sam is he does. He has memories of different realities of his own life. He knows he is a very talented basketball player in one reality. He is in a jail for juveniles in his next. He never really knows when he is going to stay in a certain reality for more than a few months, because his time slips are fragmented. He doesn't actually remember all of the realities, of course. He bounces back and forth, but not every second. Maybe he does, but those memories don't come true. Just some. It is driving him crazy. He wondered what would happen if someday he died. In reality, would he come back alive? One day he found out. He was walking down the road and was preoccupied, trying to figure out how he wouldn't drive himself completely insane when a huge truck ran him over and killed him instantly. He woke up and wondered was he in another reality, but had discovered that he was in heaven. It was all white and it couldn't be anywhere else. He was sorry to be dead, but very happy to be in heaven, and thankful that he wasn't going to slip into another reality. Suddenly he had a voice in his head tell him that there was one more reality waiting for him, and that would be it. That would be the last one. He was thankful that he was going to get his life back and be able to live like everyone else. When he slipped into the final reality, he felt hot and screamed in agony, realizing he was in hell. Thanks for watching The Assassin Rapper, and if you want to stay up to date on new content, then please subscribe and be sure to hit the bell to be notified on new content. Susan was 8 years old when she was in her home in Australia near the woods. She was happy living there until one day herself and her parents were terrified in their own house, where there was a huge bushfire out of control outside all around the area they lived. Miles and miles of land went up in flames, and she had to go down to a bunker they were lucky enough to have had. Her dad was a doomsday extremist and had built it into an old mine just in case the end of the world was to come. It wasn't the end of the world exactly, but Susan felt like it was. Even as an adult, when she lived in her own house, she had a huge fear of leaving her house. She used to be in her living room from day to night, and other times up in her bedroom looking out the window watching the world go by. One day she got the courage to finally leave her house. As she walked out the door, she jumped with fear. As she was crossing the road, a truck came straight for her. She screamed, but the truck wasn't even near her, but she thought it was going straight for her. She wondered should she go back into her house, but decided to walk down the footpath. She was petrified the more she walked, but she walked on. She knew she had to get out of her irrational fear of going outside. Just another few minutes, and she will be back safe in her home. She walked on for about 10 minutes, and when she was walking back, she could hear sirens. They reminded her of the bushfires. She knew she was getting a flashback. There were 2 fire brigades went flying past her. She was really looking forward to get back into her house. The fear was building up inside her more and more as she got to her driveway. She froze in fear as she could see her house was engulfed in flames. She was trying to figure out how her house had caught fire. She was terrified of being left outside. She was shaking with fear, wondering how could she stay outside and where else could she go. A few weeks later, she was in a therapist's office. She was explaining to her what had happened long ago in the bushfires, when her therapist went out of the room for a minute to get some water for herself and Susan. Susan went into a daze. She got out a bottle of gasoline from her bag and poured it around the room and took out a lighter and lit it. She walked out of the room and missed her therapist, who was down the other side of the hall. When she was walking away, she snapped out of her daze and could smell fire and ran. Susan didn't know what she had done, just like she didn't realise what she had done the day her house went on fire, and just like the day when she was an 8-year-old little girl setting the gorse fire to cause a huge bushfire that killed so much wildlife and so many people. The footpath. Thanks for watching The Assassin Rapper, and if you want to stay up to date on new content, then please subscribe and be sure to hit the bell to be notified on new content. Barry sensed that his girlfriend was cheating on him, so he took it upon himself to follow her and catch her in the act. He was right about her cheating, but what really made him mad was that she was cheating on him with his best friend Sam. He first saw her through his binoculars, lying down on the beach with Sam. They were looking so happy together, it made him sick. Then he followed her another night, where they both had a romantic meal in an Indian restaurant. He looked at them for just 2 minutes before he went away to avoid him going over and beating Sam all around the restaurant. The night after he followed them to the cinema, Barry sat in the back row the whole night watching them. It made him so mad that he had an idea. It was a crazy idea. Barry knew, but he had made up his mind and he was sticking to it. Barry invited Sam out on his new boat for a boat trip a few nights later. The water was really smooth and they were talking for a few minutes, until Barry knew it was time to do it. He pushed Sam over the boat into the water and threw a rock that had a rope attached to it that he made sure was around Barry's foot. Sam screamed as he went underwater. Barry felt relieved as he had his revenge. Suddenly he screamed as he realized that the rope somehow got around his foot also. He tried his best to escape, but the rock and the rope pulled him under the water, and within minutes, both friends drowned. Thanks for watching The Assassin Rapper, and if you want to stay up to date on new content, then please subscribe and be sure to hit the bell to be notified on new content. Jim was a drug dealer who sold all sorts of different drugs. He sold everything from crack cocaine to heroin to Molly. He had different addicts queuing up for him every day. Jim used to have different couriers carry the drugs for him, and sometimes he used to have kids carry the drugs because he would know if they were caught, they would be underage and not get arrested. He used the ones he knew that their parents didn't worry if they were out late, etc. One day Jim sold heroin to a known witch's son. Sheila was horrified when she walked in on her son Jasper after overdosing with a needle sticking out of his arm. She instantly cast a spell on Jim the drug dealer. The next day, after each one of Jim's customers got high, Jim felt the effect of the drug they took. It went on for a few different customers of his. He kept getting higher and higher, until eventually he died of an overdose. Thanks for watching The Assassin Rapper, and if you want to stay up to date on new content, then please subscribe and be sure to hit the bell to be notified on new content. White walls all around. It almost looked like a hospital. It was clean. White tiles, white sink, white walls, and the roof was white. Since the earliest of times, white has been associated with purity and innocence. Then again, asylums are generally white, and they reflect the exact opposite of purity and innocence. Instead, those white walls hold the mentally insane, those that are not of sound mind and are a danger to themselves and others. The irony of the contrast between the two varying white rooms is ludicrous. He looked into the mirror. Deep brown eyes gazed back at him. The freckles surrounding his nose looked as though God himself spread flakes on his face to create him. His brown hair sat atop his head, unkempt. He scratched his head to cure a sudden itch and continued to stare at himself. His reflection stared back, unmoving. He opened the faucet and let the cold stream of water pour into the sink. After a moment he cupped his hands beneath the water and scooped what he salvaged in his hands onto his face. Some of the water splashed onto the floor. He didn't seem to notice. He stood there for a moment more, face dripping with water, still staring into the mirror. What he saw disgusted him, and he washed his face once more, almost as if he was trying to wash his very skin off in the hope something more appealing lay beneath the first layer. He opened the medicine cabinet and slowly extracted a small box. He set the box on the sink and opened it. He removed a single shiny razor and placed it beside the box. He returned the box from whence it came and picked up the razor once more. He turned it in his hands thoughtfully, not diverting his gaze from the mirror. Razor in hand, he rolled up the sleeve of his long-sleeve black shirt that he had worn to both parents' funerals. The thought crossed him that both his parents had since departed this world, but not a single hint of emotion prevailed from this morbid thought. He glanced at his now exposed wrist and back to the razor. The moment the blade touched his skin, he drew in a quick, sharp breath. The icy feel of the metal made him hesitate for a moment. The razor shimmered in the artificial lighting of the fluorescent light bulb hanging directly above him. He put the blade down and sat on the end of the bathtub, head in hands and breathing deeply. He glanced at the weapon of self-harm and then at his wrists. then back to the sharp, unforgiving steel he had placed on the edge of the sink. He wondered how it would feel to cut so deep the blood poured out of his sliced wrist, to see his blood spill and cover everything around him. The thought of blood made him smile slightly, ever so slightly. It was but merely a wisp of a smile, if even that. He liked blood. The thought of blood made him think of the time he took the life of a stray cat he had lured into his home, how it had purred contentedly while he had petted and stroked it, followed by the hiss of terror it let loose when he squeezed and bit into one of its ears, bit so hard he felt the cartilage crunch under the pressure of his teeth, but not before his teeth had ripped into the skin. The blood that spewed from the missing cartilage crunch under the pressure of his teeth, but not before his teeth had ripped into the skin. The blood that spewed from the missing appendage had excited him, and he laughed ever so sweetly at the sight of the feline's ear he had spat on the floor. The sounds the cat made were otherworldly, and one can only imagine the pain it was in after having an ear forcibly removed. He held onto it tightly, so tight it had become so breathless the sounds of agony had simply faded into desperate attempts to draw even breath to sustain its miserable life. Still chuckling softly to himself, now covered in the blood of the cat, he reached into his pocket and brought out the Swiss Army knife he'd accumulated through less than desirable means. He looked at the blade after opening it, marvelling at the craftsmanship behind making such a beautiful, smooth and sharp blade. His thoughts made their way back to the cat, and he turned the cat onto its back, lifting its head to expose the throat. With a slow, precise movement he had practiced in his head, he drew the blade deep and across the exposed neck of the cat. He sliced deep, but not deep enough to sever the head. All sounds and movements the cat had been capable of carrying out ceased immediately the moment the knife penetrated and severed the blood transport systems. The blood that resulted brought a magnificent and eerily beautiful smile to the boy's face. The blood sprayed him and the surrounding vicinity, but that did not faze him. Instead, he hoisted the cat up and shook it violently in an effort to see just how much blood he could extract from the deceased animal. That was but the first of many animals that met their end at the hands of the sadist. He picked the blade up again, a glimmer of excitement in his eye as he pressed it to his wrist. He shuddered as the cold steel touched him, just as he had done to that cat. He pressed deep and hard and drew the razor in a swift upward motion. The cut was thin, as he was using a new sharp razor, but the pain was intense. He felt as though someone had set fire to his wrist. The blood was little at first, and came out slowly, but as he set the razor down, he noticed the floor beneath him was covered in blood. His hand could not be seen beneath the blanket of red that now covered it. The blood would not stop pouring forth from his self-inflicted wound. He had cut too deep. He knew something was wrong the moment he set the razor down. With each bit of blood that escaped his body, it seemed to take with it an incredible amount of his energy. He slumped into the bathtub, blood beginning to puddle in it. His eyes fluttered open after having closed for a stint of time. He tried to raise his hand, but found he could not. Blood was all he could see now. It was everywhere. The bathtub seemed to be filling with it as it continued to pour from his wrist. He couldn't seem to keep his eyes open. They closed. He tried to open them, but found he could not. He could feel the darkness beginning to take him. He wanted to fight it, but his life force had been sapped with the immense outflow of blood. He decided the best thing to do would be to accept it. Eyes closed, he tilted his head back, and did not even feel it hit the porcelain tub with the force it did. He couldn't feel anything now. It began to almost feel euphoric. He felt disembodied. Nothing mattered. All that existed was the darkness. He wanted the darkness, and the darkness wanted him. It needed him. The darkness took him, and he went, with a smile on his face. He liked blood. Thanks for watching The Assassin Rapper, and if you want to stay up to date on new content, then please subscribe and be sure to hit the bell to be notified on new content.